they're all parents and stuff, they're all pro-Māori.
Yeah, what the hell is pro-Māori?
Yeah,
Like,
and we
we've just
shouldn't
been raised
see
in
it as, I felt like Māori was my normal, and also it was something to be really, really proud about. It is a privilege in those regards, but it's not a privilege for us to have lost it all and have to then work 10 times harder to try and get it back.
No mai haere mai ki Kapiti of the Cousins,
Episode 6.
Raising Rangatira, the Tahi Effect. Good to be home. How are you feeling?
I feel nervous, I feel nervous because we have 2 guests today. And one of them is Jenny Lee Walker, who is my mum. And then alongside her will be Whātahi Puanaki, who, in the context of my mum, used to be her high school teacher, but she's so much more than that.
I had the privilege of having Whaitahi as my kapahaka tutor when I was in high school, I want to say, and the person who took me to Kotahitanga kapahaka rōpū was your mum, actually.
Wow.
So we used to go to give every Wednesday night, prakati, and that's how I got to know Whaitahi, so I'm very excited. But once I get here, I'll also be nervous.
Yes, scared shitless.
Silent.
Just go silent. Yeah, but it's not about us, but let's just kick into it.
Let's go.
Let's go. Kia ora. Kia ora. Oh, mihi ana kia kōrua. Thank you so much for coming. The main question that we want to start answering is, how do you raise a rangatira? But before we go into that, we're wondering if Mum, if you would be able to introduce Whātahi, and if Whātahi, if you could introduce my mum.
Kia ora, this is Whaitahi Puanaki, who was actually one of my school teachers at Aranui. We're talking over 30 years ago. So Whaitahi has been a massive inspiration in my life since then. Tēnā koe whaia. Oh, and I should say that you're Ngāti Hine.
Yes, please.
And I also should say, you can't have Whaitahi without knowing about the Te Pāti Māori, and you can't know Whaitahi without knowing about Te Kotahitanga, which was one of the first groups in Ōtautahi. They're kapahaka rōpū, but they're more than that. They're a whānau, they're a community. And because it's been going for so long, over 30 years now.
50.
Oh, wow.
We celebrated 52 years ago.
Kia ora.
Wow, okay, 52 years, so there you go. Kapahaka in the South Island has been moving along and evolving because of Te Kotahitanga.
Kia ora whaia.
Haka is my life. People say, that's a bloomin' religion. And, and it's not just to get up and song and dance there, it's for what that kaupapa carries. And so that's, look, I'm, just turned 40 not long ago. And not long ago. And so I will continue to say to people, join kapahaka, not necessarily to do the competition. Competition is good. It teaches you the skills and that actually enable you to really survive and thrive if you carry on for the right reasons, need to say. And so we had those opportunities with these guys. Jenny Lee was one of many tamariki, many young people that I had the privilege to actually be a part of their lives. She became a famous producer of Māori programs, but as a young person was always sparky, how she is now, was always sparky, always had opinions, politely. That was always polite, but she'd always have an opinion. She was always late. So which got her out of the detention.
Yeah, I never had one.
Excuse, Pierre.
But I just want to say, that I enjoyed you as a young person and how you've valued the relationship, and so that's been good for me. That's been good for me and quite heartening and affirming. Te kupu Pākehā.
Mum, you started talking before about Aranui High School, particularly the bilingual unit. I think is a really special place where some pretty amazing Māori have come through. I mean, Miriam Makamo, Stacey Morrison, yourself, Mum, and I think what's quite amazing is that you would have been teenagers back then, and right now Jade and I are young wahine Māori. Quite a few of our audience will be similar to us. I'd love to hear a little bit about Aranui High School.
Aranui was like going home. If I could feel it, I just knew I was just meant to be there. The whole thing changed my life. At the time, I didn't realise how much we had. I didn't realise how safe we were. These things came later in life. And then a lot of the questions I had to ask myself as a young woman moving through to the next stages in my life, I would always reflect back to Aranui and think about Whaitahi, things that she'd said, things that kept me knowing who I was. And I always, especially when I came up against a lot of scary stuff, which you do when you're growing and living in different cities, knowing that someone in the world has advocated for you to be there, to have that place, and you cannot go past Whaitahi.
You've told me that that bilingual unit was the only one in the South Island at the time?
It was the first in the South Island at the time, yep.
Okay.
We were the very first third
Wow.
form, standalone third form, whereas the class before us had to go together. And so because we were like the first third form, there was a lot of success. This is working. I felt like people figured out who we were pretty fast. There's something Māori going on. What's that? People used to say, what's that Tihi up to now? But from her came a lot of thinking differently about things, how we had been treated, how we had accepted whatever was offered. And I got to see that through generations of living, you know, from being from a family who are traditionally from Christchurch. We've always been here. And so I had understood that there was a place for us already, and it looked like this.
Whaitahi, how long have you been teaching for?
H me. I think I was teaching when I was born.
Came out with a red pen.
At the secondary school at Aranui, I'd been there, I think, for nearly 30 years. It's quite funny that people say, how can you, 30 years, because, how can you stay so long? But you can't stay for 30 years and do the same thing. I acknowledge that. So the good thing about teaching was that we were pretty much the beginning of lots of things in Te Ao Māori in education down here. Well, in Aotearoa.
Who was leading that mahi, or like what did you have to kind of wade through to be able to get to that point of having that kura?
I went away to study. I said I did some studies on language acquisition, bilingualism and all that. But we had one of our colleagues remain. He knew that I'd gone away to do these studies, and so he started setting up the scene in Aranui and putting a word around that there's a possibility of a bilingual immersion, and gauging the support of the kids initially, and there was much support. So in your question, there actually wasn't much opposition because the kids wanted it so much, and I think it was...
That's really surprising for me to hear. I suppose just from other kōrero that I've heard about that time and just generally the opposition that Māori were facing, and particularly Ōtautahi and Te Waipounamu.
Now,
And it was the right neighbourhood too, because I mean, if they were trying to put it up somewhere else, it may have got a different reception.
Yeah. And it sort of makes me think of the for Māori, by Māori concepts that are trying to prevail now, and that we love them. Sometimes you had to think the system, and hopefully that there was a positive outcome from you breaking a rule, you know, and let's face it, you know, rules are there to be broken.
Talk about taking us marching, because I never knew that you guys got into trouble for that, like as badly as you did, but I loved hearing that.
Did we jack it up a Tino Rangatiratanga march?
We went on a Tino Rangatiratanga march.
Oh, and how old were you at that point?
13,
What class?
14.
Yeah.
15.
But we took the whānau and they held the Tino Rangatiratanga flags, banners, and then they were seen on TV. And
After they told you can't go, take them. So off we still went.
But then we were all in there together. Eh? There was a massive team. So the things that come up to us as well as that, e hara te tangata kotai, eh? Yeah, hara tō mana I tō wake, you can't do it on your own. So we had a team. So I would never have survived without my Ngāti Hine whānau with me. Yeah, so that I was able to stand in somebody else's territory, and I always had my mother, who I trusted absolutely. I had my aunties and all that. That was still intact, and so who cares if I get sacked? Because I knew it would be good. They didn't know, and I was game to say in our professional circles, trust me. You know, you had to do that sort of thing. Trust me, but I had the support. We had families. You know, I believed in the kaupapa, and you know, you fill out all the forms, and I didn't. And then, but I had the support of the families. So this is some stuff that you guys didn't, well, you would have been aware of later. And
I didn't realise that part. I knew that you got snapped. I knew that we were. I mean, it's pretty obvious. We're holding the flag. We're like, you know, we're
fire to these students at Aranui High School.
And I was going to go no matter what. That was that. And so, you know, that I suspect every single person from my class is like that. We wanted to let everybody see us being who we are. I didn't feel like, I felt like Māori was my normal, and also it was something to be really, really proud about. I felt we didn't have to navigate that as children. But when I look back now, I think, thank God someone navigated it for us to have that experience.
I'm interested to know, because from my understanding, you're the only one of your siblings who went to Aranui High School.
I am.
Was that specifically your decision to ask Taua to go to Aranui High School?
Yeah, I think I just told Taua.
Not us, told.
Yeah, well, Taua was very supportive of things Māori. Very, very supportive. But Papa lived in Aranui for a very long time before he went back to the coast.
Papa Socks?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, of course.
I already had kind of relationships in Aranui, but in the end, the mum was really happy for me to learn te reo and to be a Māori woman, not just a woman. When people say, well, what is that? It's like when I get to be me with all my whakapapa and all the things that are important to me, that they don't go to the side to make you feel better or to make someone else feel like what they know is the only thing. If you look at all my friends from Aranui, they're all parents and stuff, they're all pro-Māori. They want their kids to learn te reo Māori, they want to be closer to Māori communities, haka, everything, so that their children have that sense of pride that we had.
It's interesting you say the phrase pro-Māori, which I've never really thought about in much detail, because I feel like that is kind of the whakaaro that is just being a Māori wahine, it is. But I feel like that is also kind of speaks to the privilege that we have of like...
That it's our base level.
Yeah, that's our base level. That's not...
Yeah, what the hell is pro-Māori?
Yeah,
like,
and we
we've just been
shouldn't
raised
see
in
it as a privilege. We should see it as our baseline, as our normal. But it is not lost on me that for a lot of Māori who don't get that exposure, don't get to be part of the renaissance of te reo and all of our ancestry, because of that, it's not lost on me that it is a privilege in those regards. But it's not a privilege for us to have lost it all and have to then work 10 times harder to try and get it back.
Kia ora.
I think in a lot of our kōrero and people that we've spoken to across this podcast, one of the things, the threads that keeps on coming up is that word Māori, calling ourselves Māori. And actually, most of the people we've spoken to have said, I prefer to call myself where I come from. I'm tūhoi, I'm kaitahu, I'm Ngāti, I'm kahungunu ki te Wairoa, because it's actually, when we say I'm Māori, it doesn't actually say that much, realistically. But I think one of the things that I have in my brain seen as something that is universal across ngai Māori is striving for excellence. Excellence in our crafts, excellence in whai kōrero, in our knowledge of tikanga and kapahaka. There's never ever been a point where I thought that Māori were okay with mediocrity, at least within our actual culture. And something that Mum talks to me a lot about learning under you is not being allowed to say stuff like, look at my Māori socks, or I've got my Māori socks with holes in them, you know, or I'm a hori, or ever using that kind of language.
We were not allowed. No way, no way. Like, that was just, we didn't even say it as a joke in outside, or would never bring it into the whare. I don't know, no way. But you used to always talk about too many Māori people do it. And I've heard it and heard it and heard it. And now we see people, Māori, making jokes about it and being on TikTok and, oh, I'm just going to get my, you know, your holy T-shirts or whatever. And oh, that's my Māori T-shirt, it's my best one. It's like...
I better take my TikTok down then.
and okay, cool. But we didn't do that. We were taught not to do that. We don't do it.
I just specifically remember you making a lot of things really clear to me. Even just as a young girl, like things like what I might experience as a wahine Māori and what I might experience because of this body that I was born into, whether it's racism, sexism. I remember we would listen to the news on the radio and they would be talking about people who have committed crimes and people they're looking out for. And you'd say things to me like, notice how when it's a Māori, they say it's a Māori. But when it's a Pākehā, they say it's someone who's unwell, or they'll never actually say it's a white person.
I think I kind of tried to fill in the gaps with you and say, okay, you got to kind of be mindful of this, or do you notice this? But I didn't want to be that mother either. I wanted to be what worked for me, which was I just got to see people going about their thing, living their dream, being consistent. Whaitihi and my other teachers at Aranui, I really feel they just wanted us to see the beauty in our whakapapa. And there was so much to be grateful for. But what I wasn't prepared for is that other people didn't see us the same.
Whai, as a kaiako, when you see, you know, there's little tamarukis, there's little tamariki Māori come into your classroom, what is it that you see in them?
I said to one of you before, nā wai. And I think, nā wai tēnei mokopuna. We're going to shape them and influence them. But at the same time, you know that they've come with something. But the nā wai is a big one for me.
Nā wai. Who do you belong to rather than who are you? Who do you belong to? And you've entrusted me, us, with your taonga, you know, all those sort of things, and it's actually quite a lovely feeling. Oh, that's the puhatu, she's the uri, there's the stones and all those sorts of things. And really getting into place the nawai. Just to wrap it up, I just asked the same question that we asked in the beginning is, how is it that we raise rangatira?
Probably the biggest thing I learned at Aranui is stay out of their way. Like Whaitihi never, ever, ever said, she was always looking for a Prime Minister, but she never ever said, I think you're going to be a lawyer, I think you're going to be this. She never put a label on us. And so we went out into the world thinking we could actually pretty much do anything. And when no one believed in us, well, we believed in ourselves.
We can talk philosophical or logistical day-to-day stuff. But one of my things that I used to often say was, if it's not right in your puku, it's not right. Say it. Trust yourself. And I say it like that. We must trust our own instinct if something's not culturally right. And what's happening with your generation now, they're getting like that, and so appears, comes out like questioning, where they go, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Sometimes there is an answer. Even some of our generation say, move aside. But we're finding that you fellas still like us there. And just to be there to give that support so they can find their way in this world and be sure of that gut. That gut is telling, this is not right. Trust it. Get some advice. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
It's hard to top that, man.
I rawa ngā kōrero. E mihi ana kia kōrua e ngā māraikora. E mihi ana, e mihi ana, e mihi ana. Now we got to have some tamafrikis to turn into little super Māoris. And now a baby.
Nā New Zealand On Air I tautoko.
Made with the support of New Zealand On Air.